much. Thank you for coming along to my little session with my boss, actually, Alex McKnight, who's down in Cornwall. So yeah, I'm Lesley. I'm a modern workplace consultant from Symity, but prior to that I worked 20 years or so at a little company called GlaxoSmithKline. I was in corporate communications and doing other things there, building SharePoint sites, loads of them, and then moved on to nurturing a big Yammer network as a IT business, the comms business partner to IT. I left to help other companies do the same because it was very successful. And then a couple of years ago, Microsoft Teams popped up trying to push Yammer out the way, but that's another story because of Viva Connections. So yeah, so then I joined Symity last June, and they gave me this little project. I had no idea the scale of it at the time, and the rest is history. But my colleague Alex is going to kick off the session and introduce kind of like the whole project, then hand back to me for the ACMP. So over to you, Alex.
Thanks, Lesley. Hopefully you can all hear me in the room. Happy days. So yep, welcome everyone, and apologies I'm not there in person, but you've got my lovely colleague Lesley there to have live in the room with you. So yeah, I wanted to start off. Have you got these slides? Are they sharing through?
Yep, you're good to go.
Super, lovely. So yeah, the kind of the client that we're dealing with in this scenario was Department of Work and Pensions. So whether you know kind of what they do or not, but they basically are the government department looking after kind of universal credit, helping people back in work, all of the kind of support services, etc. And there's about 115,000, 114,000 staff across the UK, and they're spread over like 280 sites, and there's about 20 million claimants or thereabouts. When we were involved with this, obviously the pandemic was starting to kick off as well around Teams, so they had a real need to get their people connected from across the country. And some of the key challenges that they had was around a legacy phone-based kind of dialing conference solution, and it was kind of complex and costly. The actual phone system they had was office-based, so they were unable to actually service their remote workers now, having to work from home. They were reliant on Skype for Business Online, which they'd only just really rolled out previous year, but that was coming end of life, and it was only calling and chat, so there wasn't any kind of collaboration. And they had a rising demand for kind of different apps, so people were using all of the other kind of non-team solutions in grey IT that they were trying to install in different areas and stuff. So they're trying to get a consistent strategic approach is what they needed. And then we were looking at other areas to support them around kind of desk booking for, you know, COVID-safe desks, return to work, things like that, and also helping them with what they call under caution interviews. So this is where they've got a potential fraudulent claimant, and they need to do an interview with that person, but they couldn't do it in person in the same room now. They needed to have a socially distanced. So that was kind of some of the challenges that they had. So a whole raft of things that we looked at. Okay. Do my Chris Whitty moment. Next slide, please. So the kind of so what we were looking at was a kind of the innovative Microsoft Teams solution. We need to do this rapidly. We need to do it at scale, and yes, there was the unfolding global events that we needed to take into account as well. So basically delivered to the 114,000 users and migrated to all to Teams within 8 months. Massive undertaking. We didn't think necessarily we could get there within the kind of 10-month window that they originally said we need it done by, but we managed to smash it out of the park and get it done in 8. So they're pleased with that, and there's a lot of hard work from all the team that went into it. That thing also included 45,000 users enabled on the global kind of like dialing conferencing, 80,000 users enabled the Skype phone system and calling plans. Also deployed over 440 meeting rooms for the MTRs across 280 sites, and that was a massive undertaking logistically. As I mentioned, the interview and the caution scheme, we got that up and running, and also customized and deployed a team desk booking app, which was built for some central government partners as well as DWP, and that supports over 20,000 people managing their desk bookings. So every DWP employee is now empowered to achieve more with Teams. Next slide, please. So obviously, with something of this scale, the challenge around the adoption and communication is huge, and the success of this technology is really underpinned by how well people will obviously pick up and adopt it. So our core focus was around how do we enable people to understand what they've got, how to use it best, and do all of this whilst they're still learning how to work from home as well. So we had, working closely with DWP in a blended team, we kind of defined the kind of instructor-led training events, ran 40,000 attendees through training, and over 500 sessions that we held, and we even had 3,000 people in one day that we got through training sessions with, which is a massive undertaking. The feedback was amazing coming back from the end users, and wherever we did have areas that people had questions or something that was like a frequently asked, we tie that back in, so we had a continual improvement through the training. So over time, that training got more and more targeted to key concerns that people had. We had to make sure that we took on board that people have different learning styles, and we are catering for that through either on-demand live sessions or pre-recorded bite-sized sessions, quick reference guides, lots of different ways we can split up that kind of knowledge so people can dip in at their own time and level of learning how they wanted to. The key thing is we got this Teams Essentials thing out the door pretty quick. We had Teams Pioneer Club, which Lesley will come on to in more detail. That was a real key element for underpinning and energizing the adoption drive. Next slide, Lesley. Cool. So this is some of the snapshot bits of feedback that we gathered. But some of the phenomenal feedback that this program gained, and some of my favourite ones that we've got here was people saying it really transformed the way we work and collaborate. I now feel closer to my manager and able to be a contributing member to our team during this kind of ongoing lockdown and time of challenge. Being able to improve ways of working and actually thrive. And that's a real key thing now. It's not about second best. This is actually changing the way that people are able to interact with their teams and do things better, not necessarily just do what they used to do remotely. And this has been without doubt the best product rollout I've ever seen. One of my personal favourites. I'll put that one on a badge, I think. Next slide, please. So all of this culminated in, you may have seen our stand, and Lesley, I think, is it U40, is that right? Stand we've got here?
Yeah, U40.
U40. So look out for this picture, because this is on our stand, so you can swing by and have a look and talk to the folks there. But this project and others similar in kind of complexity were all part of kind of Symity getting the kind of accolade of a finalist in the Microsoft Partner of the Year around the meetings, call-ins and devices, which we're very proud of. Next slide, please. And just a quick call out really to the kind of adoption change team. And this was a very much a blended approach, working hand in glove with the DWP team. And we had a really excellent blend where we were working together to understand the challenges and move it forward. So keeping it in theme with our amazing comms venue this year, shout out to the well-oiled adoption team and the F1 pit stop style and how we were delivering these things. Absolutely fantastic. So over to you, Lesley, to run through the rest.
Thank you very much, Alex. I'm just a bit nervous because I'm kind of like my time has been cut a little bit short. So I'll try and keep to time, but I've got a lot of content for you. So we can't use chat in the team meeting, but we are going to take questions if I've got time at the end, but I think I'm going to be right up to the finishing line. Please take photographs. There's hopefully you'll find a lot of interesting content here that you can take back to your own organisations. So we actually base the whole programme on the ADCAR approach. So some of you might be aware of ADCAR, not sure if you are or not, but this is a workshop in itself. This is probably a 5-day ProSci workshop in itself, but basically it takes you through awareness, desire, knowledge, ability and reinforcement. So it's kind of like a 5-step pathway. So we base this on, it's got along here, along the bottom, the enablement zone, which is the awareness and the desire and going into knowledge. And then we go into the engagement zone. So on the next slide, this is kind of like the approach that we took. So we didn't really talk to the staff in DWP about ADCAR because it's a bit of a dry subject and you need to be a weirdo like me and some of us in the room to actually love it. But this is what we actually pulled together for them. This is this 3-step pathway. And along the bottom, I've taken through the arrow of the enablement zone and then going into the engagement zone. So basically, the discovery workshop was to introduce some of the members of staff to the idea of change management. Then we took them into the Go Beyond workshop, which is about sharing success stories. And then the adoption clinics were where we were kind of like giving them exactly what they needed. We basically surveyed them the whole way along, what more support they needed. And this whole pathway took between like 3 to 5 months for us to actually to run the whole thing. So the discovery workshop. So this is some of the materials that we used in the discovery workshop. So some of you might have seen this change management curve. It's also known as the bereavement curve because this is what you actually go through as feelings and emotions when you lose someone. It's also a feeling of what we've all gone through recently with wearing face masks, this idea of the shock, the disbelief, and then you've got to just understand this is acceptance. We are still wearing them now, and it's kind of like a sustainable thing that will go on for a while. It's also, I feel, where we've used this with carrier bags in the environment that we've been told to bring our own, bags for life. And we use this as an example of Microsoft Teams. So in DWP, they were heavily using Skype. It was going to be decommissioned in July this year. And we had this, you can see on there, there's the little, wrong one. There's a badge there. So that was what became the kind of like the Pioneers logo. And there were about 200 people that became part of this program, the advocates. They were the early adopters. And they'd probably been using Teams for about three months or so. But what we were asking them to do from top down was to drag the rest of the organisation through, who were now working at home because it's now the pandemic had hit. So we basically kind of like positioned them on the curve at this kind of like negotiate stage that we have to move them along. So one of the other ideas that we introduced to them as well, and you might have heard about this because Microsoft really adopted this approach about 2 years ago, which I absolutely love, and it's the growth mindset over the fixed mindset. So you can look this up. It's by Carol Dweck from 2012, and it means having a fixed mindset means you tend to give up challenging tasks easily or avoid things where you've failed before. You believe that being good at a particular activity is a fixed state and something you can't control. But having a growth mindset means you bounce back from failure, you learn from that negativity, and you want to try again. And it's good to get negative feedback because you can grow. So on there, you can see I've got some examples of statements where, what it feels like. As I've said on there, failure is an opportunity to grow. But on the other side, though, you've got failure is a limit of my abilities. So this was actually developed by Carol for nursery school children. And it is about trying to do things for yourself, trying to do up your shoelaces, trying to do up your zip as a little, at nursery school. So that's what this is about, and it's still being used with kindergarten children now. But Microsoft loved it as well, and they talked about it a lot. So we were basically saying to them, in DWP, you can try all these new things, give it a go, talk to your staff. Some of these key stakeholders that started using Teams early, some of them were running 800 job centres around the UK. So it's a small, unique, brilliant group of people. Some of them had worked at DWP or in the public sector for over 20 years, and now they were expecting to pick up using Teams and using it from home. So we were saying to them, try some of these things and encourage others to use them. So in the sessions that I was running, we gave them a few ideas of, as already said, you can try this and you can try that. So then we'd run a whiteboard session with them in Teams where we were actually showcasing one of the really good apps that many of them hadn't even tried. And I did a 5-minute session around growth mindset. Is what do you now plan to try and do that you haven't tried before? And it worked really well. We ended up in 5 minutes, we ended up with about 20 or 30 post-it notes in the session that they were all really excited about trying new things that they hadn't thought about before. And then we did another 5 minutes with, now can you see there are any DWP processes where teams might enable improvement? And some of them got really excited because they were already doing this, and others were now saying, oh, I didn't know that we could do that. Planner came out as a hot app that they were loving. Planner was being used in a really great way, and with OneNote as well. So that was a really useful session. And this then tied back to something we asked them to do at the next workshop called the Go Beyond. So at the end of that discovery, we basically said to them, we hope to see you again at the Go Beyond workshop, where you'll be rewarded with the Pioneers badge. You're going to get access to the Pioneers Hub in SharePoint, which I'll show you in a second. And you'll be invited to share your old ways and new ways of working on Team Story, which is basically going back to what we just asked them in that really quick whiteboard session. Gosh, I'm really dry. So this was the site that was created for the Pioneers, and it was in Teams, called the Pioneers Hub, and it was created by a lovely chap called Stephen Wade, who was working at DWP. He now works with us at Symity, and he created this in SharePoint, and as you can see, he's attached it to the left rail there, so it's really easy to access. So prior to this, basically what had happened is that anyone that became a team owner ended up being thrown into a team owner's team group. It ended up as a dumping ground and a bit of a noisy place for team owners, because ended up with about 2,000 people in there quite quickly. And so they decided that wasn't the best approach for creating a champions program. They still hadn't had the real kind of like strategy and guidance and training around using Teams, so it became a bit noisy. So as I kind of like came into this, that Teams got shut down, and we opened up this new Pioneers kind of like exclusive club with the digital badge that will be there on their profile. And then we actually worked with them kind of like from the ground up, hoping that they would kind of like operate top down to with a bit more clear strategy about what we're asking them to do, and just giving them loads and loads of support. So at the end of the discovery workshop, we surveyed them, and this was really important, because it's showing empathy about and this is something again that's come out from Microsoft in the last couple of years, this feeling of supporting people along this change journey. This would have been difficult enough to do if they were at work, amongst their colleagues, but remember, they were all working at home. They'd all suddenly been given laptops sent to them. We all know the struggle that this has gone through, and DWP were a real focus for people that were going through job changes, so they were under a hell of a lot of pressure. These were the bottom-up sessions that me and my colleagues were running, and one of the top trainers is at the back there, Dan. So these were the training sessions that we were running for months, and they were going on daily. So there's a whole kind of like a pathway of that the staff could select from. So we were running leader-led training sessions. I was running the team owners back-end training session. I did those over and over again. And then as we were kind of like finishing our engagement, we recorded all those sessions, and they became kind of like on demand, and they could access them from the Pioneers Hub. So if you want to take a picture of that, that's we really don't mind you photographing these slides. So that was the end of the discovery workshops. Then we went into the Go Beyond. So from the survey, we asked them at that point, would you like to join the Pioneers Club, or whatever you want to call it? We'd understand if you're really busy, if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed and you don't want to come back at this point, but the door will always be open for you, because we could already see that these people that we had earmarked, we had chosen them because through the back-end analytics that they were already pretty high-end users. So these were already our real champions. So the uptake was about 95%. They all wanted a badge, and they all wanted to know more, which was absolutely brilliant. So when they came back to the discovery, to the Go Beyond session, because they're now pioneers, so they've gone to discovery and now they're going Go Beyond. So as I said, this session was about hearing what they've already accomplished. So and these sessions were much smaller, so I wouldn't have more than maybe 5, maximum 6 people in these sessions, and we would give them a good 7-10 minutes to actually give us a preview of what they've actually already created on Teams. So we asked them to, we gave them a template. It wasn't this template, but this is a template that we created for actually another customer, and then we started off with this kind of style for DWP. But basically, we just wanted to hear how they were working prior to Teams, and actually what their new ways of working are going forward, and all the different apps that they were bringing in. The style that the team at DWP ended up adopting for this piece was actually on SharePoint in the Pioneers Hub. So this was just kind of like a template to start them going. But we captured about 30 stories from the pioneers. And as I've said, the app that really came out strong was Planner. And then again, we surveyed them again at the end of this. So this is where, again, we put in this the idea of the empathy model, the idea of empathy. How can we further support you? We know that this is a very difficult time. What are you hearing from your colleagues about the reluctance to take up of Teams? The big one was Skype, but we knew it was going to come to an end. And where do you need more support? Where do you need more training from our training team? So then from there we took all of that feedback, and what time is it actually? Because I'm not sure if my watch keeps stopping. Brilliant, thank you. Okay, I can breathe a bit. Thank you very much. So then we went into the next round of workshops. So this is now, about, I don't know, we started to do these maybe a month, 6 weeks later. We started to develop these workshops, and the other workshops were around, let me just go back, just check my notes here. So we ran other sessions on OneNote. SharePoint was a big one. So they were running SharePoint internally, and we were doing our own SharePoint sessions as well, because as we know, that's the back end of Teams, and people were really struggling with the use of SharePoint. We ran sessions on telephony, because that's a big deal. That's what Symity are all about. We ran sessions on Planner and polls and forms. So whatever they needed, we provided those sessions for those smaller groups. So then one of the things that we were hearing is about, the reluctance of adoption. So I ran some sessions on that were regarded as like train the trainer. And these were more open sessions. Anyone could come along to these. So I did about 8 of these sessions. So from the survey, excuse me, these were basically what we heard is the reluctance to, and the pain points, the challenges of using Teams. So there was basically the culture. There was how do we access Teams? Again, the issues with Skype, running Teams meetings, using less email, managing the busy notifications, don't understand the difference between conversations and chat in Teams, and again, the whole file management piece with SharePoint. So quickly run through this. This is kind of like what we heard about that number one, that cultural change resistance. So there was just a feeling of upskilling. I don't have the time. Apathy. Just a feeling of I don't like Teams. I'm a well-known technophobe. There's a digital literacy issue here. Lack of vision. Just don't see how Teams is going to be able to improve our work. Collaboration. I don't want to share my work until it's finished. And then just feeling of a general overwhelmed feeling of from being all these upgrades that have gone on within the department. So I had a look at the company culture. I'd only been there working with them a couple of weeks, a couple of months. I had no idea about the culture of DWP, but you can look on, you find that on company internet. So I got the latest kind of like statement about the culture, and usually it's the new people that start an organisation that will be introduced to this. People that have been there a long time, it's quite a difficult thing to describe the culture of an organisation. But what I was basically told is that they're told not to show off, and kind of like, I can't remember what the other thing I had noted on here and it's gone past, but it's kind of like, don't show off and kind of like, fear of kind of like sharing your work. But the whole thing about Teams is the complete opposite of that. And one of the things that I really encourage over the last 5 years of being an MVP and using Yammer is this phrase, this idea of working out loud. Who's heard of working out loud? Great, thank you. So working out loud really means sharing your work with a view that others might find it helpful and others might help you improve your work, which is the opposite culture of what they were being told at DWP. But suddenly using Teams as you can on the likes of Yammer, that's about working out loud and sharing what you're working and hoping that someone else, by the fact that you're sharing it, your ideas, and it might not be fully baked, others might help you improve your work. And in a big organisation, that's kind of like priceless. So we looked at kind of like the culture, then we moved on to the access to Teams. So we just kind of like noted for them where they can actually get onto Teams. We took them through, the issues of Skype. But with this one, I introduced them to the iceberg, the Teams iceberg. Has any of you seen this before? This was created by Joel Olson, who's a fantastic MVP and RD, and I love the iceberg of knowledge. So basically, with with Skype, it was all well and good. You had calling, chat, and meetings, but you go into the use of Teams, you've got all of that, and then you've got SharePoint, you've got the channels, you've got bots, you've got connectors, and you've got apps, and now we've got Viva Connections. So that's another, all of this other great stuff that you can access through the lens of Teams. But, of course, I've added that on just recently. So that kind of like saying to them, this is why you need to get off of Skype as soon as possible, and you've got access to all this great stuff. Teams meeting, they're saying here, this is kind of like a lot of this has been fixed now because this is going back, a good few months ago. Problems accessing Teams, Microsoft are doing fixes all the time. So we're just basically saying, do all this, check everything, you're working from home, make sure you've got the right certified headsets and everything, switch your camera off when you're joining the meeting, then switch it back on when you need to talk or in smaller meetings, and then you've got all of these great features, and make sure you've got good Wi-Fi. Then, I've just whizzed through these, but the difference between email, Skype and Teams, but we can move on from that. They don't understand the difference between chat and activity notifications. So really here, we're saying we reminded them Outlook's not going away, it's not being decommissioned, you still need it for all of those things there. So you still need to use Outlook, but really it's for, third parties and keeping up to date with alerts and notifications that are coming out from all of the, Teams and the use of SharePoint, PowerPoint and Word documents. Maybe you're being, comments are being made to you and things. Then we've got the difference between channel, conversations and chat. And then I kind of gave them a bit of a description of what actually Teams are. It's the parent of the channels, and then the channels are children to the Teams parent. So I'm not going. You all know this stuff. You're all using Teams by now. So, and then I gave them this little story about the reason you should acknowledge posts. So imagine you are in a real room with 200 people. So you tell those people something is helpful to them. They totally ignore you. So that's what it feels like if you make a post, a comment or something. This is the same on Yammer. So the guidance here is, it doesn't mean to say you like it. It means you've acknowledged it. But now we've got lovely, emojis and everything where you can put a bit more emotion in it. So yeah, bring those posts to life. Bring those conversations to life and get involved and use emojis and GIFs and all of that sort of thing, and have a bit of fun at work. So we actually said, yep, have fun at work. You're working from home. So we gave them some ideas to have some fun with their colleagues. Use the whiteboard, we were encouraging to create what we're calling like a work-life balance playground channel, because they weren't using Yammer at DWP. So we're saying, have a bit of fun in a dedicated playground. They had the canteen, a notice board and all sort of thing, scavenger hunts on Teams bingo. And then the biggie was file management, and there was a lot of pain points around using, just getting the understanding of how to use SharePoint. And then, as I said, we already ran some SharePoint sessions and helped them with that. So just to round it all up, so the lessons learned. Excuse me, I've really nearly lost my voice here. So as I said, we originally opened up a Teams champion community, but it became a dumping ground, so it was shut down. Don't assume that team owners are champions, because it's just not going to work that way, especially in an organisation that's that huge. So we basically used the Graph API and targeted who already were the pioneers based on their existing Teams usage. But be mindful that people, learn in different ways. So we had the top-down pioneers, that 200 group, but equally, as I said, my colleagues at the back were doing this bottom-up, leader-led intensive training, and we ran, I think, thousands of sessions. I don't know, it was hundreds of sessions, and also capture the success stories and show the rest of your organisation, the great things that are happening over here, rah about it, work out loud. So we hope that, this has inspired you to try some of this in your own organisation. Yeah, it was a big engagement that we ran through at pace, but I feel that the actual kind of stepped pathway is something that you can pick up and use in your own organisation, that is much, much smaller than this. So that's kind of I've presented on this now externally. This is about the 4th go round, and I'm not going to talk about it anymore because we're really proud of it, but it's kind of done to death. But now my next biggie is helping with the adoption of Microsoft Viva. So if you want to know more about Viva, come and find me on stand 40 over here, or just look me up on LinkedIn or Twitter, and I'll be more than happy now to start talking about Viva. And the DWP effort was immense, and I just so enjoyed working with those people. They were absolutely brilliant under really difficult circumstances. So and on that note, how am I doing on time?
You're doing great. You're doing great on time. So now we have an opportunity for some questions. Does anybody in the room or on the remote session have any questions? Okay, here we go.
I never get tired of throwing this around. So if you were going to give people a single sound bite of what they should do or not do in a project like this, what would you say? You get one sentence, imagine you're on Jeopardy or something. What would be one takeaway?
I think it's that first one. I think it was, you don't assume that just because suddenly someone's a team owner, that they're going to be your advocate and your champion, because they're still learning themselves. So it's kind of they've got to have a bit of a fire in their belly that they love new ways of working, and sometimes that's not appropriate for everyone. So they might have been made a team owner because they're working on a project, but that doesn't mean to say they want to really help everyone else. So it's, you've got to find the kind of the right people that just suddenly love this new way of working. And as I said, some of these people, when I got to know them during those second workshops in the Go Beyond, I was blown away that they'd been, in the department for 20 years, and suddenly they are doing all these amazing things with OneNote and Planner and Teams. And it was, it was stunning. And then the actual teams that and the channels they had down the left rail that I could see was really sophisticated, that you wouldn't think that, that they would have picked it up that quickly, because they kind of preferred the older way of working. So don't assume that you know who your champions are right from the. Don't assume that you're going to say you and you are going to be champions. You have to kind of experiment, maybe for 3 months, 2 or 3 months. Let it grow naturally, and then have a look at the back end analytics and see who's actually, doing this pretty well. Then actually, invite them into a kind of like an advocates program.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Our next question is from one of the online people. Lauren, please go ahead and unmute yourself and ask away.
Hi there. I was wondering if you managed to accomplish this using the MS365 E3, or whether you needed the E5 add-ons for security and compliance.
That's a question for Alex.
I'm going to pick that one up. Hi, Lauren. Yeah, so DWP generally has an E3 license. They've got some E5s, but not across the board. So yes, everything that we did with DWP to get this up and running was on the E3, and obviously call-in plans as well.
Cool, thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, here we go. Just a second. Let's see if I make it.
You get the feeling with large government departments, there's lots of red tape, bureaucracy. Did you run into any problems with rules and regulations and maybe information security getting in the way of what you're trying to do? Because there's a lot of great stuff around, very interactive, lots of collaboration, but the dark side of that is the rules. So did you come across any of that, and what did you do to get on top of it?
I was stunned because I personally didn't. The appetite to make this work was enormous, and everything that all of these kind of like the early slides and everything, with the change management models and everything, they just lapped it up, really. They just needed as much help as possible, and there was very little that I put forward. Actually, the only thing they asked me to do was, I remember off the top of my head, not to refer to the change curve as the bereavement curve. That was the only thing that was said. Don't use that. Say, use another example. And I was like, oh, okay then. But it is known as the bereavement curve, and you can see that. But no, they just kind of like gave me pretty much a free license to work with the guys that we mentioned at the team, the small team that was there, just to throw everything at it, because we haven't got anything else. So yeah, Alex, did you have anything that you wanted to
Yeah,
know?
I mean, from it's a great question, and from the technical perspective, of course, there are governance and controls for any kind of, certainly for central government departments. The main drive of this was really to connect up their own organisation internally whilst working remotely, rather than it being connecting up with lots of other organisations at that point in time. So most of the challenges you find with central government generally is if you're going outside the bounds of their own department, that's where most of the challenges are around kind of data security, data exfiltration, that kind of thing tends to lie. The internal piece definitely we found was a very engaging and exciting space. The external piece is still a process that we're working with them on. They've got certain levels and kind of controls in place today, and they're obviously wanting to expand that further in the future.
Thanks.
Excellent. Unfortunately, we're out of time for additional questions. Please, for anybody in the room, stop by Booth 40, look them up on LinkedIn, and ask additional questions about that. So thank you to the people on the Teams meeting online.